don't know whether you heard the little gecko, the baby gecko saying hello. Kind of chirping, as opposed to the deep sounds the mummies and daddy geckos make. Quite astonishing, the sounds here in the forest. I can hear the sea from here. Behind me, someone pointed out there is a pyramid. It's not a pyramid, it is the end of a roof to part of the lay people's or accommodation, which is between the sala and where the nuns live. And from what I can see, because I don't go over to that side beyond the sala, it's an empty building, which I think might have been used as a hospital kuti when Longpur, the founder and senior elder monk, was dying. The founder here, that is, of this monastery, I think it was maybe where he was looked after. So it's empty, that building. And just to the, if you can see any light between the trees, literally be where the trees finish, just at the point of that building, you can just see the sea, because it drops away steeply, cliff-wise with trees, down to the beach, where sometimes I make these talks. That location is just a little bit behind me. So this is very close to the sea. It's unusual to have all of the forest sounds and the sound of the ocean in one place. I'm used to the sound of the ocean, having lived by the sea a lot of my life, and for 3 years in a van on a beach, literally on a beach, parked right where the sea would come right up to my poor old van, which rusted and fell to bits as a result. But one is never in complete silence. And I was talking yesterday about a still mind, mental stillness, the ability to develop stillness of the mind, or in fact more so to recognize stillness of the mind when we are fortunate to experience passaddhi, which is the Pali word for peace or tranquility, one of the 7 factors of enlightenment, along with another, which is equanimity. And these 2 qualities, both qualities included in the 7 factors of enlightenment, so those qualities of an enlightened being, these 2 qualities, equanimity and peace or tranquility, very much go together. One needs to develop this quality of equanimity in order to experience true peace. And talking yesterday about the busy weekend many people have had, but of course generally busy lives many people have, with family, social, business, all of the things going on, seemingly preventing us to just sit in peace and quiet. Now you may think that monks, monastics, living in monasteries are able to sit in peace and quiet, like retreat or meditation retreat conditions all of the time. Not so, not so. You really either live in a large community of monastics, which will include many junior monastics, novices, where I was in India, about 70 at any one time, who were from the age of 8 to the age of 20 in full-time education, as far as full-time education in a monastery goes. And lads, boys, not quite as boisterous as one might be used to in the outside world, because they still practice the constraints. They are under the training rules of monastics, not the full, not all of them under the full 75 training rules, but most of them, a lot of them, which are about deportment and manners and the way we go about our activities of body, speech and mind, to keep ourselves ever mindful of this practice and sila, enabling us to meditate and develop wisdom, along with being educated. And then 30 odd other monks with duties, either running the monastery or running the educational side, or other varied and wide varied skills they may have. I'm getting eaten, I think. Am I imagining this one, or can you see it? I can't see any insects, but I can feel something. So yes, that's a busy city monastery, let's say. And then you have forest monasteries. Oh, you think, okay, I've experienced a city monastery, oh, I'm going to go and be a forest monk and live in the forest. Well, I did it the other way round, actually, and found the city monastery far more peaceful than the forest monastery, even with all of the monks and all of the goings on. At night, when the city calms down, becomes quiet-ish, as far as cities in India goes, there is an element of peace and quiet. I could sit and look at the moon, and they had some sort of balcony areas, and it was relatively quiet. Here, you get a lot of noise at night. Once the sun sets and the intense heat of the day has died down, then the insects and all the creatures come out to play. And I enjoy it very much. It's very much an experience. You feel very much part of nature and part of the forest. It doesn't feel like it's them and you, a them and us situation. You have to integrate, be part of nature. And nature is, by its very nature, is wild. It has a quality of unruliness, of what is natural to these worldly conditions, untamed. There is also this in city life, of course. This in city life, however, is more as a result of constraint, and then people or beings fighting out of constraint through various we call it asavas, which is a Pali word for leakages of our attention and our mindfulness going out to seek distraction from reality and what's going on. So rather than being with the still and peaceful mind, we seek lots of stimulation through sensual experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, whether it's watching movies, TV, entertainment of any kinds, music, and of course also eating, and just going out and enjoying and partying, or working, keeping busy, all of these things to distract ourselves, keep ourselves busy and our mind occupied, away from what we call the experience of boredom, which few of us really get to experience, and when we do, have aversion to it. So the city life in a monastery, forest life in a monastery, wherever you go, wherever you run away to, you may run to Asia from Europe or the other way round. What goes with you is this body and this mind. These kilesas, these defilements, with their roots in greed, hatred and delusion, that we're trying to not suppress, but understand, and therefore create conditions, causes and conditions to negate them. Not even satisfy them, but take away their impetus by providing a counterpart. So where we have hatred, we develop the skill of loving kindness. Where we have greed, we just develop the skill of generosity. Therefore negating the effect of these causes of a lot of our problems, a lot of our uncertainties in life, which generate this delusion, greed, hatred and delusion, this lack of wisdom. And that comes as a result of knowing this, being able to counteract greed and hatred through the understanding of nature and the fundamental faculties of existence that are impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and things being out of our control. All conditioned things are impermanent. From the most temporary thing you can think of to the most permanent thing you can think of. So a mango is of course something that doesn't last for a very long time. The Himalayas are mountains which seem to have been there forever and will be there forevermore. They're not dissimilar though. They're both experiencing and undergoing anicca, impermanence, change, uncertainty, just in a different time scale. This time scale is just as a result of convention, conditions put in place by ourselves, time, in order for us to measure, see, and group together in society on occasions with a common aim. When you go into nature, it's less important. Time becomes, when it's light, it's daytime. When it's dark, it's nighttime. In this part of the world, it's pretty even. The clock doesn't, like in Europe, it's very much half the year it's dark for a long time and light for a short time, and the other half of the year it's light for a long time and dark for a short time. Here it's pretty much even, 12 hours light, 12 hours dark, so that's nice, a nice balance. Otherwise there's quite a lot of adaptation when you're living in nature to get used to having a very short light daytime. Of course also the temperature difference. But here it's fairly even, but the time so much isn't so important. After we've living in the forest, us monks have eaten, which is quite early. We're not having to keep an eye on the clock of that one because we've usually finished eating our one meal a day by 9 a.m. So we don't need to worry about eating past 12 o'clock. It really does help with this whole stilling of the mind when you're not continually, obviously monks don't wear watches, but people in these days are looking at their phone, looking at the time, because of the next thing that's going to be happening. And it has to be said, that cannot be got away from. But what can be got away from is your attitude towards it, your feeling towards it, your attachment to it. Because I would say 9 times out of 10, when we're looking at the time, we don't need to be. There are occasions when, of course, you do. But just check this yourself throughout the day, how many times you check the time. You don't need to check the time as often as you do. Most of you these days have notifications, alarms, all kinds of manner of ways of knowing without even checking that you're not going to miss something. So in that respect, I'd say largely you do not need to be continually checking on each minute and second of the day as it passes. It's going to pass, and the time you're expecting will arrive if you're still alive. So this is one way to reduce the burden of attention on something you do not need to have attention continuously on. If it helps in terms of time management, you can set alarms, notifications, in order that you do not need to be checking the time. And for instance, when you are needing to have a time schedule for your meditation, so to finish meditation, you wouldn't sit in meditation with a clock in front of you watching the time. You'd set a timer to signify the time when you are to end your meditation, if that's what you have to do. And that's sufficient. And then for that period of time in meditation, time is irrelevant. And when it truly, you do let go of this attachment to time, this time in meditation will become eventually timeless. You will develop equanimity and stillness of mind, peace and tranquility, such that, like living in nature, time is less important. It isn't a second by second ticking away. You have an experience of timelessness through contentment of this moment here and now. When you can establish this depth of meditation, absorption, samadhi, then the time spent in meditation to some extent is irrelevant, whether it's 20 minutes, 2 hours, or 3 or 4 or 6 hours. There will be physical needs, but mostly in samadhi, this time is irrelevant. At the end, when you come out of your meditation, you'll be at peace. You'll have a feeling of tranquility, regardless of how long you've spent in meditation. Now it becomes very nice to spend a lot of time in samadhi, if you can, and it also, this has the benefit of really increasing your sharpness, awareness, conscious awareness in all activities of daily life afterwards, seeing clearly without this clutter in your mind, a more openness, awareness. So I spoke of an empty mind yesterday. Now, not meaning an empty mind as in the implication of there's just nothing there, but uncluttered. But more importantly, emptiness. And the reason I'm not keen on the word emptiness is it implies a space, an enclosed space. So a container would be empty, a box, a cup, a pot is empty. Now the kind of emptiness in the mind is not only is this experience timeless, it is locationless, and it has no boundaries. Your mind, where is it? We have a brain, a thinking brain. It has the constraints of being within our skull, in our head. And we are probably not so aware, but it is there on top of our body, on top of our necks, up here somewhere, our brain, thinking brain. We don't really think of it so much like that. We're aware of a lot of our senses, our eyes, our nose, our ears, our mouth, being in that area, in that zone, for obvious reasons. It's the closest to this brain, this computer, to interpret all that seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting part of it, and then this tactile sensation of touch throughout our bodies, giving us overall experience of comfort or discomfort, pain or pleasure, is very much recognized by this brain, and its tendency to give emotional reactions towards those tactile experiences, which we then associate with memory and then project into from the past and then project into the future. All of this going on in this body. So do we need to be studying many manuals about this? Do we need to be learning many things about this? When we have this body to observe, whilst we're doing many other things, whilst we're also sitting in meditation, bringing our awareness to this body alone opens up a whole area of questioning. Not of debate, because it's so evidently true. You don't have to debate with yourself or with anyone else, or cross-reference with different contributors to commentary on the teachings of this body. You know you have this hand, and you know how this hand feels right here, right now, in this moment. There is no disputing that. You know you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. It's just that. But we have a tendency, when talking on philosophical matters, or even just the simple idea of the nature of existence, to want to expand our knowledge into vast areas of investigation to find out why, the answers to questions, and often the answers to questions that cannot be answered. And I did talk some weeks, months ago, about the questions the Buddha recommended should not be pondered, should not be occupying our time, because they are questions that cannot be answered. And refer to that video for those answers. But the point being, we have all of the answers here. And when we can see that we have all of the answers right here with us, here and now, all of the time, then our mind does have a tendency to settle and become peaceful, even in the busiest of and difficult to deal with environments and situations. We see things more really. We reatify things. We see things realistically as they are. We break them down into sense contact, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, and see them as just that, whatever they may be, pleasurable or painful experiences, experiences that you like or experiences that you don't like. This is a way of recognizing our tendencies towards greed, hatred and delusion, those defilements, those kilesas, and a way of bringing our attention, our awareness to when we are going towards greed or towards hatred or towards delusion. Delusion is confusion, and directing our minds towards where it's greed, say the nature of generosity, giving, or even gratitude can very much help with that tendency. Or when our minds are going towards the tendency of disliking, aversion, or even hatred, to then bringing our attention, our awareness to not so much all the fluffy loving kindness, but just what we do like, what we do have fond feelings for. And then equating that with what it is that we're at the moment not liking, and seeing that there isn't much difference. You're not liking this thing or this person because of one reason or another. But you'll like this thing or this person for one reason or another. And when you look at this closely, there isn't much difference at all. And even if you don't like this person, someone does. Many people do. Or even if many people don't, and someone doesn't, their mother does. So you can too. Not overtly, not openly, but you don't have to hate them, you don't have to dislike them, or it doesn't have to give you any sense of aversion. Just let it be, let go. It's only your attachment to what you think or how you think it should be, your expectations, that give you any sense of aversion at all. And this is developing wisdom, or panya as we call it, wisdom, panya, the Pali word, which is the counterpart, the negating source for delusion or confusion. Now it has to be said, living in nature, in this natural environment, does very much help with all of this. But we have our own thoughts, our own kilesas, the more deep-rooted ones that come up when you're not exposed to external issues. And this is why monks practice as they do in the forest, to really delve deeply into the kilesas, to get to the real root of greed, hatred and delusion, and to destroy greed, hatred and delusion, and ultimately desire, to become fully content, achieving contentment which is ultimate satisfaction, which cannot be achieved with any conditioned things or anything based on an understanding of you as a self, you, this body and this thinking mind, as a person, a persona, because it is only a vehicle for awareness. If we call your awareness, your conscious awareness, or your mind, as opposed to this thinking brain, our citta, it is like the driver of a car, and it's driving this car currently. When this car breaks down, it moves on, taking with it the kilesas, its karma, so results of actions of body, speech and mind, this body, and how it speaks and how its thinking mind has thought. With it, yes, but unseen, only there as causes for future conditions. And by delving deeply into this citta, this puru, what knows, in meditation, in samadhi, we can see those hidden kilesas, those hidden causes for future conditions holding us back. And you too can do this just as readily as a monk in the forest, through restraint of what you want to go out and get, these asavas, these leakages of, I must get some entertainment because I'm bored, I must eat this because I'm bored. But sit with boredom and see where these desires arise from, and see if there's something you can do to negate, counteract, and soften their effect in this way. So it is just as easy, in different respects, not just as easy, it's different. It is possible to become enlightened as a layperson as it is a monk. A monk is practicing this full time. We are in this tradition, in the forest, we speak little. This is my only conversation. Even if I did speak Thai, which I don't, so I have no choice, I can't speak to anyone here. But even if I could, and I could use Google Translate or something like that, you know, that's not a really successful way of conversing, is it? It's not chit-chat. But even if I did speak the local languages, wherever I am, we don't. We speak little. We eat little. I mean, people often refer to the fact, that I'm a bit thin, bony. Well, if you see the other Ajahns here, they are too bony. We're thin because we eat one meal a day, and we have a lot of physical exercise, walking up and down this mountain, walking to go and get that food every day and back again, and sweeping, and the heat of the conditions here. But we have enough. We're healthy, we have enough, but not sufficient to put on weight. Now, it's different when you see the city monks. You'll see much happy monks, you might say, the fat and happy. Well, fat isn't necessarily happy. We all know that in this day and age, that there can be lots of underlying health conditions and problems. And thinness is perhaps only apparent in, you'll see forest monks are generally a little skinny looking, in the fact they're not all bulked up with muscle, you know, to counteract the fact that they're thin. So very fit, muscly people don't have a lot of fat either, but they have muscle instead. But we're not actually lifting weights and and eating protein shakes to build up muscle either. So what are we left with? Skeletons. So us forest monks are a bunch of skeletons. If you saw, there's just 3 monks here now. We're all of a similar age. And if you saw us walking around, you'd say, hey, there's just 3 skeletons in their robes there. And it's true. So we eat little. So we sleep little. So we speak little, eat little, and sleep little. We sleep little because it's really not necessary to sleep more than 4 to 6 hours when you are not working to a schedule physically every day, as people are, who require more sleep, of course. When you're not working physically also to a schedule every day, as people are, we can do with less sleep. Also, our main work is in samadhi, is in meditation. And this is more restorative, more beneficial than sleep itself. So we really, if we're spending, myself, I spend probably these days 6 to 9 hours a day in meditation. And this is on top of my 4 hours sleep. So if you include that, I have 13 hours sleep if you include my meditation. But some of you less experienced meditators might not consider sitting in meditation as the same as sleeping. But when you develop the ability to meditate and really experience samadhi for what it is, you will see and experience for yourselves the restorative and restful qualities of meditation. And in order to do this, you have to understand where the obstacles are arising from. The obstacles are arising from greed, hatred, and delusion. So wanting and craving things, or not wanting and running away, having aversion for things. And this confusion, greed, hatred, and delusion, is what stops you really being able to develop this stillness of mind. But we don't have to have empty lives, we don't have to have empty minds. Whether you're a city monk, forest monk, or someone in lay life, there's plenty there to occupy all of the senses and the thinking mind 24 hours a day. In fact, in lay life, you do have the option, the ability, not only to go on retreats where these are very sensory depriving. So it's like you have very little cells to sit and meditate in, and it's very quiet, nobody talking. It's a noble silence, or really complete silence in some cases. And they artificially create an environment which is good in order for you to really practice meditation. But it's just for a limited time, of course, a week or 14 days or even longer. But you're going to be going back into the outside world. And then it's quite difficult to transfer from one to the other. But in a city monastery or a forest monastery or in lay life, you're amongst it all, and you're really training. This is the practice, training the mind to be still and to develop peacefulness and tranquility with all that's going on around it, and still have calm. And you can do this through this regular routine and practice of meditation, and also through keeping moral virtue. And this in turn is developing wisdom. I think time is getting on, and as I spoke for quite a long time on this subject in yesterday's talk, I don't want to go on for too much longer. I had something then I was going to say, and then time, the question of time, because I lit an incense stick thinking that would be my clock today, but then it ran out some time ago. I think because the fan has been making it burn down more quickly. So that didn't work. Yes, so we have skinny monks and fat monks and tall monks and short monks, old monks and young monks. And in lay life it's the same. So there isn't much disparity between the two. We all have this equal opportunity to practice when we are able to experience and hear, see and try out for ourselves and practice the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, because this is what it's about, this incorporating into your life these moments when you can just bring yourself inwards rather than going outwards, to see how you're feeling, nurture how you're feeling, and deal with how you're feeling through what I was just talking about. Now, this isn't oversimplifying things. In fact, getting back down to basics is often, I think, what is being avoided when people overcomplicate things. You can read books and books in commentaries on the teachings of the Buddha, but this wasn't what the Buddha was teaching in a complicated way. He was teaching in a simple way. The known teachers in modern day, whom are renowned for their teaching, taught in a simple way. The Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. Simple, understandable teachings for all people. Now, of course, yes, there is very interesting commentary on top of all this. It is said the Abhidharma was taught by the Buddha to devas, so a much more intellectually able to understand and higher realm, angels, if you like, in a heavenly realm, than ourselves. So why do we try to understand it if it was designed for devas? And was it taught by the Buddha to devas? There's an element of belief to be had there. It is essentially a commentary on the understanding of the Buddha's teachings, and it is very in-depth and intellectual and very interesting compendium of ideas on meditation and attainment. And people spend their lives studying this Abhidharma. But does it lead to enlightenment? I don't know. I haven't met many whom I consider highly attained. And generally we're talking about monks in this situation, but lay people also. I certainly haven't met any that highly attained lay people whom are thoroughly versed in Abhidharma, but I have met many people who are thoroughly versed in Abhidharma. Far more than I could ever hope to be, or even begin to have their level of understanding. But I don't see peace, tranquility, or even the meditating so much. No, this is no criticism, this is no judgment, this is just an understanding. Whereas I do experience often and meet and see people in monasteries, or monks, let's say, and nuns, some nuns, whose lives have been spent really practicing and looking at this teaching, this educational format. And this is our body, and this mind, and how it reacts, behaves, is how it teaches us when we are practicing mindfulness. The reality, the truth that the Buddha taught us, the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and a path leading to the end of suffering. And to see this clearly, it is that path that we practice. In brief, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So I should leave it there. I hope there's something useful amongst my ramblings today. And really I just wanted to reiterate a few points from hanging over from yesterday. If you have any questions about any of this, please or ask me in the comments or by email. Those comments and questions via that chat thing or by email are always gratefully received, and I always try to respond. Like I've said before, if it goes into threads of conversation, I won't get involved, but if there's specific questions, then I can answer them with no problem at all. And so it's no more to be said than I wish you all the very best in your practice with metta, and many blessings to you, and my gratitude to you for watching, my gratitude to all of you whom have subscribed to this channel for subscribing, and to be continuing to view whatever random content I pop on here, because it is for you that I do this. Okay, this is an opportunity for me to have a conversation, but as you'll appreciate, it's not really a conversation until I read your comments the next day and then it opens it up and makes it all feel so much worthwhile. I think if I didn't receive any feedback whatsoever, I probably wouldn't have continued to sit here talking to the back of a plastic phone for as long as I've now been doing it now, which is still only eight months, getting on 9 months, which, like I said before, I started it at the beginning of or somewhere in the last Vassa, and as an accident and a mistake, and then an experiment, and then continued, and I've continued doing it, and will continue to do so as long as it's useful. And anything that's not useful, just ignore it. Let me know. Anything that is, use it and share it. And also let me know. And any ideas you have of subjects you'd like me to talk about, whatever they may be, please let me know. And I'll try my best to cover those topics. And yes, I shall leave it at that. So, thank you for watching. This is the answer. I'll take this off first. There we go.